Why emotional health matters is because we're human. And when you suppress or deny a part of yourself, you actually lead to what could be disastrous effects down the road.
What if the most important lesson your child learns about emotions doesn't come from your strengths, but how you handle your struggles? Research consistently shows that children develop emotional intelligence not primarily through instruction, but through relationships. Studies on emotion coaching and attachment found that children whose parents acknowledge emotions, help label feelings, and model healthy coping tend to develop stronger emotional regulation, better social skills, and greater resilience. The encouraging news: parents don't need to be emotionally perfect. Yay! Research suggests that what matters is not perfection, but, quote, good enough, unquote, parenting, being present, responsive, and willing to repair when mistakes happen. So we are excited to be back on the Dad Central Show. And today we're going to be chatting about raising emotionally healthy boys and girls. Even if you're still learning yourself, there is hope on the Dad Central Show. So Drew, how you doing? And good to have you here as always.
Thanks, Ed. Doing pretty well. And great to have these conversations. Great to explore topics that maybe haven't always been explored in fatherhood, and obviously to add some value to anyone who's listening. So thanks for joining us. If you're a listener, if you're a new listener, we're really excited to have you, and we hope you take something that you can apply immediately, because that's ultimately our goal. We want to help you in the most challenging role you'll ever have, which is fatherhood. How are
Excellent.
you, Ed?
I am outstanding. Really, we are finally getting, I guess, spring, summer like weather. So, though the last few days when we're recording this have been a little cool, but the fresh air is nice. So, I haven't had to use the air conditioning that much yet. But they're predicting we're going to have a hot summer. So, the air conditioning is ready to go when need be. But I'm loving the sunny weather, and it's great for outdoor activities like baseball, like some people I know.
Yeah, but our schedule has been so dry. I haven't played a game in probably 2.5 weeks, and it's looking like rain for our next game, which is this coming Friday. So we'll see. July could be very full with baseball, but June hasn't been.
All right, well, let's get to it. As always, Dad Central is a parenting podcast to reduce stress and build confidence in fatherhood. As always, our show is sponsored by Doveman Plus Care. Doveman Plus Care believes care is the best of a man, because when men care for themselves and others, there is a positive impact. And we want to get your questions. We want to answer your questions. So please send us questions so we can answer during our show. The email address is podcast@dadcentral.ca. So during our conversation today, we're going to cover the following areas. We're going to talk about why emotional health matters more than ever. And we're going to talk about the myth of the emotionally perfect parent. Then we're going to talk about 5 ways to raise emotionally healthy boys and girls. And then what we're going to do is just close it off with what emotional health looks like at different ages. And then the gift of growing alongside your child. So, Drew, let's kick it off with segment 1. We're going to talk about why emotional health matters more than ever.
Well, there are probably many reasons we could talk about, but I think the reality is the world that we live in is stressful. We're bombarded with thousands of messages every day through the screens that are a daily part of just life. There's unfortunately, as a result of these screens and the social media, there's a lot of peer comparison. There's a lot of uncertainty, and of course, there's a lot of volatility just in the world that we now have access to, whereas before we wouldn't have seen it. So there's a lot that goes on that we are dealing with on a daily basis as parents, obviously, but children are not immune to that because they're with us. They're experiencing the world along with us, and but they haven't developed. Their brains haven't developed yet, and so they need us to be able to help them navigate it and manage the emotions that stress and the world will create in us. So those are some of my thoughts. Anyways, you want to talk about the foundation, or what emotional health is the foundation for?
Yeah, so let's talk about emotional health as the foundation for healthy relationships, academic success, mental well-being, and resilience during challenges. So emotional health with dads and their kids, it's the foundation for those things. So I'll repeat again: healthy relationships, academic success, mental well-being, and resilience during challenges. So emotional intelligence predicts many positive life outcomes. And then finally, emotional health isn't about being happy all the time. It's about recognizing emotions, expressing them appropriately, and recovering from setbacks. Before we move on to our next segment, Drew, is there anything you're wanting to add in regards to this?
Yeah, we may have missed the biggest one of all, especially now that June is Men's Health Month, and we've been talking about mental health certainly, and I'm of the firm belief it's emotional health that contributes to, let's say, poor mental health, and so we were recognizing, and this is a great thing, that there's so much of the culture, the way that men and boys have been socialized, doesn't line up with what being truly human is, right? This culture. We're going to talk about this in this next segment, but why emotional health matters is because we're human, and we have both logic, reasoning, but we also have emotion. And when you suppress or deny a part of yourself, you actually lead to what could be disastrous effects down the road. So, if you've listened to any of the previous podcasts, we talked. One of the analogies was about this idea of a pressure cooker. When you don't process emotions in healthy ways, it's like basically the pressure ratcheting up internally, and that has disastrous effects. So, and men and boys have been socialized. We don't do this. Emotions don't matter. We need to logic and reason. And some of it is how we're hardwired, but a lot of it is socialized and cultured. And that's proven not to be healthy. So maybe we'll move on to the next segment.
All right. Our next segment: the myth of the emotionally perfect parent. Drew?
Yeah. And we'll have to preface this by what I just said is many dads have never experienced a man who recognizes, understands, or processes emotions in healthy ways. Many of those that was our fathers. They just sucked it up, and so you grew up with this idea of man up, boys don't cry. If you did experience emotions, you were immediately told to get over it. You got to be strong, you got to carry all this weight without being able to process. And so what happens is that we're learning these emotional skills as adults because we didn't have a atmosphere or environment where we were taught about emotions, the value of emotions, and how to process them in healthy ways. And so what happens, kids are naturals at this. They're going to expose these gaps in healthy emotional expression, healthy emotional regulation that we didn't even know existed. When you get triggered, that's something that is unprocessed or unhealed, and you've got to work through those things. And so the reality is it's okay to be learning these things on the go, because you're then teaching your children, modeling healthy growth, you're modeling vulnerability, you're modeling humility, you're modeling the recognition that you don't have to be perfect. These are all great things that children can learn and catch from us as we go through the growth process ourselves. And so they don't need us to be perfect and have it all figured out. They need us to keep growing. And they really do benefit when dads take on some of these important steps of learning to apologize, learning to model calming yourself in the face of difficulty or frustrating events. Learning about how seeing dad talk about his feelings or seeing dad ask for help, showing vulnerability and humility. It's actually strength and wisdom when you do that. But if they don't see that, they're not learning. So, you know, we could, and Ed, why don't you just maybe give an example?
Yeah, okay. And it's funny, when I was doing some facilitating last night, but a great example here, and this actually came up last night, saying, I'm fine. And again, dads may say, I'm fine, but why don't we reframe it this way and saying, I've had a stressful day, so I'm feeling frustrated. I'm going to take a few minutes to calm down. That's emotional modeling, because fine, that's just one word. So that fine can mean different things to different people, but be open to share what that fine means, especially to your child. So really, really important. Next
Yeah,
segment, let's talk about 5 ways to raise emotionally healthy boys and girls. And Drew's an expert at this because he's got boys and girls in his house. So this is right up his alley. So true. So true. I'm putting you on the hot seat. Go for it, man.
yeah. Thanks, Ed. Appreciate that. I'm an expert at making mistakes, but learning from those mistakes is what I'd say. So I'm learning just along with everyone else. So the goal here is that we learn together and we grow together. So anything that I have learned, it's been because I've made that mistake first, and I want to pass on how I've been able to work through it, because that's ultimately where kids need. How do we keep working through it? So I want to also take one quick step back. Is we're presuming, we'll say, that dads may have the ability to actually recognize what they're feeling and then be able to come up with the actual naming word for it. I find, dads say I'm fine because they don't have the words or the recognition of what's actually going on with them. So while we want to encourage them to say, I've had a stressful day, I'm feeling frustrated, they may not even recognize that. And if that's the case, the first thing you might need to do is just get some time with yourself where you can just decompress. And even if you don't know, you can say, I don't really know what I'm feeling, but I know I'm feeling a lot, and I need a few minutes to be able to process it, or I need some space, or I need, I need some support that knows I'm not exactly at my best now. Anyways, point is, dads, it's okay, even if you're not even there, to be able to say, I'm feeling frustrated, but recognize that you might be feeling something. Sorry, I digress. But the 5 ways to raise emotionally healthy boys, we're going to go back and forth, Ed. I know you put that on me, but we're still going to go back and forth. Number 1, love the book that I got that really represents what this guidance is. The book is called What Am I Feeling? That's by Dr. Josh and Christy Straub. And it goes through the story of Sam, who has show and tell at school. And Sam is bringing his dog Cooper, but he's actually feeling pretty nervous and scared. And then his classmates end up having a bunch of different feelings, and they act out in certain ways. And the teacher has a great message. Point being is, we need to help kids name what they feel. Just like I just referenced, we might not be able to do. So that's step 1. And that starts by knowing what are the emotions. And so Dr. Travis Bradbury wrote a book years ago called Emotional Intelligence 2.0. In this opening of the book, there's a chart that has essentially the 5 core emotions, but then it also has the degree of intensity within each of those. And it's basically a chart with all these words. So shame is one of those core emotions, embarrassment, terror. These things give the degree of intensity, and to me it's a great resource. It was like so eye-opening but so simple. And that if you don't have a resource that helps you understand what these emotions are, then I would encourage you to get one, and I'd encourage you to start practicing using them to describe what you're feeling, but also help our kids name their feelings, because it's literally the most important steps. There's a great phrase that says you have to name it to tame it. So naming our emotions, helping them come up with the words, is step 1, because children who can actually identify their feelings are much more able to regulate them. Number
Okay.
2, Ed, for you.
Validate before you fix. That's number 2. So when a child is upset, and children never get upset because, they're just human beings, dads often jump into problem solving. So instead of saying, that sounds really disappointing, and then we go, before, here's what you should do, we need to say, here, that's what's really disappointing, not being a fix it. And a lot of guys, I hear that phrase, we're fix it, fix it, fix it. But instead of saying, here's what you should do, say, that sounds really disappointing. Acknowledge the emotional first before you go into fix it mode.
Ed, let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is? Why do dads go into fix it problem solving mode right away?
That's a really good question. Some people say they're hardwired. You use the term before a few months ago about hardwired. I off the top of my head, that was the first thing that came up to that question that you asked.
Yeah. I have a theory that one, we're uncomfortable with emotion. We're not socialized, we're not cultured to be able to even acknowledge. And we kind of want our kids to not display any difficult emotions, because then it's like, well, I might feel my own difficult emotion. I might feel helpless. I might feel overwhelmed. I might feel insecure. And to me, I think that's one of the reasons why we go into, because we're good at fixing stuff. We're good at solving problems. We feel validated when we are able to resolve something for somebody else and say, look, I did that. And the reality is, I think a lot of dads are uncomfortable with the fact that they may not be able to help or take away the pain that somebody else might be experiencing when they're having their own difficult emotions. And while that might be the truth, the reality is then it's kind of like, as a coach, the number one step I have to do to coach somebody else is I have to manage my own emotions. Because if I'm triggered or I'm caught up and I'm like, that's not coaching, right? I'm dealing with my own stuff instead of being able to be fully present for somebody else. So it just dawned on me as you're sharing that. I thought it might be worthwhile to explore this idea. Why do dads go into fix it mode so quickly?
And
And
also,
it's just a
too,
thought.
add on what you said. That's what they're used to.
Yeah, learned
That's
behavior.
the way they were
Absolutely.
raised.
Yeah.
You know. But I will just, before we hand it back to you, say children need connection before correction. So, Drew, what's our next point?
3 is teach that all feelings are okay. I would add model that all feelings are okay. Not an easy thing to do, because ultimately a feeling is just a feeling. It's not in control of you. It's a line from Dr. Josh and Kirsty Straub's book. Okay. But the problem is we label emotions as good or bad, right? And we're talking about this idea of anger. Men have been chastised or worse because of anger, and anger's not a bad emotion. We have anger for a reason, because something wrong has happened. So in that case, anger is another emotion. It's how we express or deal with that could translate into why it's bad. And so anger, sadness, fear, grief, joy, they're just emotions. And so it's okay to be angry, but it's not okay to take your anger out on somebody else in a destructive way. It's okay to be sad, but it's not okay to continue to perpetuate destructive, negative thoughts because you feel sad. So don't judge the emotion. The emotion is the emotion. It's how do we then work through, recognize, right? So you don't have to be afraid of difficult emotions. We need to know that they're feelings and we need to feel them, but we can always move through them. Another line from the book is, um, I think I said, it's a feeling is just a feeling. It's not in control of you. And another line is, we don't take our emotions out on others, right? That's an important piece. So anyways, children ultimately need to learn emotions aren't something to fear or hide, so that they can ultimately bring them forward and you can help them process them in healthy ways.
All right. Next one. Let boys feel and girls be strong. Wow. We could spend a whole episode on this one, but we'll get through it. So, we need, as a society, to challenge outdated stereotypes. Boys need permission to cry, to express fear, to show vulnerability. And girls need encouragement to speak up, take risks, and express confidence. And it's funny, we're talking about kids here, but the adult society, I think that's the same thing also. Well, I won't get too deep into that because we'll be here for the rest of the day. But also, too, the key message that emotionally healthy children are free to be really human. I think that's a really important point, wanting our children to be fully human, not just a box, but a full human, full of emotions. Let them have the wide range of emotions. It's part of being a boy, a girl, a human being, an adult. So that's what I have to say on that. So, Drew?
Yeah, and I agree. Last I checked, our brains are the same. We've got two hemispheres. We've got the logic reasoning, but we all have the emotional center as well. Human. And we need to learn how to process. And if you look at the science now on brain or neuroscience, fascinating, brilliant, but just so powerful, so powerful. So absolutely, we need to be free to be able to express them. And number 5 is modeling repair. So the reality is we're going to make mistakes. We're going to lose our patience. We're going to, get angry, and we're going to do something we regret. The reality is what happens after that is more important than the fact that it happened. So instead of burying it, instead of puffing up in pride and arrogance, instead of running away or essentially shutting down or withdrawing, all things that I've done at times. So I'm not judging anyone. I'm simply acknowledging these are the reality of how we deal with things. What we want to do is simply come back and model repair, like saying, I'm really sorry. I shouldn't have yelled earlier. You didn't deserve that. I was having a difficult moment and I didn't handle my emotions the way I should have. Again, I'm sorry. Will you please forgive me? The reality is that act, that repairing teaches accountability for actions. It teaches humility. It teaches and asks for and the idea of forgiveness. And it ultimately helps build resilience within the relationship. Every relationship is going to go through difficult times or hurtful experiences, but how you model and repair helps the relationship withstand the very real challenges that life brings and relationships brings. And so you are building a great foundation in your children for the rest of their life, because last I checked, unless you literally go off and live isolated as a hermit, you are going to have to learn how to deal with people and be in a relationship with people the rest of your life. It's a crucial life skill. Over to you, Ed.
All right. Our next segment, what emotional health looks like at different ages. So we're going to cover 3 different stages. Drew, you want to start off? You want me to start
Yeah,
off?
let's go through this pretty quickly. So, young kids, ultimately, they're learning from us and they need help with the basic foundations. They need help identifying emotions. And as we know from brain science, their prefrontal cortex does not begin to develop around until the age of like 7. And so that means they need us to help them co-regulate emotions up until the age of 7-ish, because at that point their prefrontal cortex, which is logic reasoning, can help them learn um, to mitigate the powerful effects of just that limbic emotional system. And so our calm, our patience, our peace, our willingness to model these things up until that age is so crucial. Over to you, school age.
School age, want to have begin understanding more complex emotions. Our children are growing, so their emotions are going to get more complex. And this is a time to really start to get into those emotional conversations with your child or children. They're beginning to develop. So this is a time to set that foundation about having conversations about emotions with your kids. This is what we call prime time to get that going and make that happen. Drew, back to you.
Yeah. Yeah, well, let's talk about teens. I have teen girls right now, 15 to 13-year-olds. So honestly, it's challenging. But here's what I'm learning. They certainly need less fixing. Hard for me. I'm acknowledging it, and more listening. They want respect. They want emotional safety. I also think they want to feel heard, and they want to feel affirmed, right? They're demonstrating, critical thinking, they're demonstrating decision making, and I think the more that we can support them by affirming the positive steps they're taking, the good decisions they're making, the strength of their convictions or the strength of their choices, and hearing what they're learning and saying, wow, like it sounds like you're really, you are getting a lot out of this, or you're demonstrating this. They want to feel like they know stuff. And so the more we can help them feel validated for what they know, I think the better it is for their feelings of self-worth and self-efficacy.
Excellent. So, just before we move on to our final segment, just remember at every age, children need someone who makes emotions feel safe rather than shameful. Let's go to our last segment, the gift of growing alongside your child.
Yeah. When I get together with dads, we usually do some form of a like an icebreaker, and I ask the question of, what's the the best part of fatherhood? Usually some common answers, and then sometimes what's the most challenging part of fatherhood? Sometimes they're almost the exact same answer. For me, my answer is always, you how much I recognize I need to grow. One of the greatest gifts of fatherhood is that it changes us. We do grow, and we do get better, and we do become more aligned and in tune with what our children need, but I think refine us as people and as men. And so the reality is our kids will teach us patience, whether we want to learn it or not. They'll reveal wounds that we need to heal, and they help us become emotionally healthier. And so that to me is it's a constant growth and evolution. And if you're engaging in fatherhood in that way, that's, I think, the most valuable way you can do it. So we could ask a simple reflection question here for you as a listener in terms of what emotional skills are you learning today that you hope your children will have tomorrow?
All right. As we wrap up today's conversation, this is what we covered. We talked about why emotional health matters more than ever. We also chatted about the myth of the emotionally perfect parent. We got to 5 ways to raise emotionally healthy boys and girls. And then we talked about what emotional health looks like at different ages. And then we talked about the gift of growing alongside your child. So, some takeaways. Number one, emotional health is caught more than taught. Let me say that again. Emotional health is caught more than taught. Your children learn from your example every day. I'd almost say every minute, but you're not around your child 24 hours a day, but every day for sure. Also, progress beats perfection. You don't need to have mastered emotional health to teach it. And then finally, repair is one of the most powerful parenting tools. So, Drew, what is our resource we have for our family today?
Uh, our dad mentor, father leader community, and our connected dad course. So one of the foundations of the connected dad course is stage 2, know and regulate yourself. And it goes deep into some of the science, the research, the foundations of emotional regulation, emotional awareness, and giving you practical tools to model this. Even if you feel like you haven't done it very well, it's going to give you step-by-step guidance on how to do it, reflection sheets. Anyways, dad mentor, father leader community for the peer support, and the connected dad course for the science, the foundation, and the practical next steps.
Great. Fantastic. So before we end today's episode, I have a closing challenge for dads. This week, choose one moment each day to do one of these things. Name your own emotion out loud. Validate your child's feelings before offering advice. Apologize when you've made a mistake. And or ask your child, how are you feeling today, really? The importance is because raising emotionally healthy children doesn't start with becoming a perfect parent. It starts with becoming a willing one. So definitely pick one of those and contact us. Tell us how it worked out. So as always, I'd like to say thank you for spending the most important thing, your time, hanging out with us during this episode of the Dad Central Show. And as always, don't just manage your time, manage your energy. Remember to give yourself grace, and we'll catch you soon.